Welcome to Optimizing a Customer Experience through the 4 pillars of Internet Resilience Masterclass. First and foremost, thank you for giving us some of your precious time today. My name is Leo Vasilou, a former practitioner and current author of our annual SRE report. I'm joined by one of the smartest people I know, Brandon. Brandon, would you mind taking a second to say hello?
Thanks for that, Leo. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon DeLapp, Senior Solution Engineer at Catchpoint and Tech Enthusiast. Like Leo said, thank you, everyone, for spending some time with us today, and I'm looking forward to this being relevant to your current roles, and hopefully you can take something out of this session today.
Thank you very much, Brandon. Before we jump in, I figure I'll cover a couple of housekeeping items. Kudos, Brandon. So as you can see, we're making use of the chat function. So please feel free to interact, say hello from where you're joining us today. Also make note of the Documents tab where we've placed some links to a couple of resources. The Q&A tab up at the top right there. If you have any questions you would like for us to answer along the way, please type them there. Otherwise, say hello and from where you are joining us today. Now, let's take a sneak peek at what we'll be covering today. So optimizing customer experience through the 4 pillars. So we'll talk about what the 4 pillars actually are, talk about some methods and strategies as it pertains to monitoring and observability, and then hear how some of our customers, some of the largest software platform companies in the world, realized benefits by implementing these 4 pillars. Now, let's go ahead and jump in. So, the 4 pillars. Now, before we get into the 4 pillars, and since this is about internet resilience and customer experience, I figure I'll give a quick visual stat as to why we care about any of this in the first place. Why are we here? So internet performance monitoring, the concept of monitoring your internet stack. And so this question here was around internet outages, degradations, incidents. And when we think about the complexity and distribution of the internet as your new everything platform, your new network, your new development platform, your new integration platform, it's not a matter of if an incident will occur, it's a matter of when, and more importantly, what are you prepared to lose? So I'm pleased to provide a sneak peek at some upcoming research, of which this is a part that we'll be releasing very soon, just to show how large total economic impact, or TEI, can be in the eyes of the 300 plus IT and digital leaders who responded to our interview. As you can see, 42% said that total economic impact was between $500,000 and $5 million in the last month. Now, considering this is a TEI question, take, for example, if you're a platform provider, if your platform has an incident, not only might you have to pay SLA credits, but your customers lost their revenue and the ripple effect continues. So this was way more than just we were down for 5 minutes and lost $100,000 in shopping carts question, right? Total impact. And getting now to the formula, the pillars, we'll start at the bottom, right? At the foundational level, your services have to be available. They have to be doing what the heck they're supposed to be doing at the desired time. That's right, the availability pillar. If and only if they are available, can you take a measure of performance? Is it fast or is it slow? Users expect them to be fast, and if they are not, you might as well be down. And that is the essence of the phrase, slow is the new down, right? That spinning hourglass. So availability, performance. Now let's talk about this idea of reachability, to which we ask, what good is a brightly burning sun if its rays cannot reach you on the beach on a cloudy, stormy day, right? What good is a highly available, highly performant, super fast data center if those bits and bytes cannot reach the far corners of the internet? So you want to enable and think about this concept of reach so they can get to your users wherever they are in the world, or at least from where your target markets are. And finally, when all of these things, these services are continually available, fast and reachable consistently over time, then we talk about that as a reliable service. Now, each of these pillars are crucial in shaping the overall customer experience. By monitoring these aspects meticulously, we can preemptively identify potential incident impact and optimize interactions, ensure great experiences for every user. And when we can preempt impact, when we can ensure our services, or when you can ensure your services are able to withstand or adapt to adverse conditions, that is the essence of resilience through these four pillars. Now, this is a masterclass on optimizing customer experience through these four pillars, but to understand what we mean by customer experience, let's take a look at a user journey illustration. Nothing crazy here. We're just setting the stage for the conversation. So the internet stack are as important as electricity, part of the user journey before they even get to your application stack. On the left, a person hailing a ride share. They're in some urban setting, definitely not sitting next to your servers or services in your cloud or data center. Before they even get to your application stack, the request goes across this internet stack, which will be different for your different users in different parts of the world, right? They hit the GPS, tag the location service, DNS recursion probably dictates what data center cloud to send them to. And then finally, the request hits your app stack, which is a whole other array of components, also probably across multiple clouds and data centers. And so, Brandon, if that internet stack is different for each person, wherever they are in the world using their products and services, then why does so much monitoring still occur here at the source? A lot of people assume that this is the environment in which their software operates, or assume if they monitor right at the source that that's quote unquote good enough to understand what the user's experience will be like. But that's simply not true, is it?
Well, Leo, I hate to say it, but a lot of people think this way because IPM has only recently evolved as a business capability, just like observability. And to answer your question, no, of course not. Of course, it's not good enough to understand the user's experience just from the cloud. Even if all the applications themselves are on a single server in the data center that we see this user sitting in, there are external dependencies. For example, as you mentioned, DNS or CDN. If you're in the cloud, the chances are that your services are distributed across multiple availability zones or regions. And regardless of which setup you may have, unless all of your users are squeezed into that beautiful AI generated data center that you see on the screen here, they have their own dependencies, which you don't have control over, but they can certainly impact your service. So you better know about them. And arguably, this is probably the most provoking visual in this deck. Each one of the dots on the right-hand side of this screen here is their own version of Enso's restaurant on the left. Each one of these dots represents either an anytime or an anywhere customer, or an anytime, anywhere employee. The resilience formula, those 4 pillars that Leo just walked through there, apply to each one of these dots that you see on the globe. And this type of resilience was not possible before IPM.
Thank you for that, Brennan. And by the way, that was an excellent answer to the question. If monitoring the old way was sufficient for users' experience, I wouldn't have asked that question. So, all right. So now that we've painted a picture, and also before we get into some of the methods and strategies, what we'd like to do is open our first poll. So if you could just take a moment, for those listening at home, navigate to the poll tab and let us know, is reachability a new concept to you? So we talked about availability and performance, which I think most people are familiar with. And then the idea of reliability has been around for a little bit. But the question is reachability a new concept to you? So here we go. Take a look at the answers. So yes, no. All right, no's got the majority. So excellent, right? So, it started with objects moving to the edge. Now we're seeing more and more functions move to the edge. We're seeing more and more GPU for AI at the edge, right? So you've got to make sure that whatever it is you're doing can reach your users wherever the heck they are in the world. So thank you for responding to our first poll, and looks like no as a majority, right? Reachability as an idea is not a new concept to you. Okay, so now let's get a little bit into the frameworks and the pillars, right? We talked about what the pillars are, right? Availability, performance, reach, reliability. Talked about an example user journey, and then we talked a little bit about the why we care stat. So before we get into some of the methods and strategies to talk about, and when we were talking about the pillars themselves need to be monitored or measured, right? They need to be monitored or measured both actively and passively. But what does that mean? So proactive monitoring and passive monitoring. So proactive or active monitoring, the telemetry from emulating client to server interactions. For example, your synthetics for your web, your internet synthetics for your full stack, right? Web protocols, DNS protocols, trace routes, etc. And the idea of let's say programming a node, a robot, a vantage point, right? Whatever you want to call that client to, for example, do a ping or an HTTP get once a minute, once a second, twice a minute, twice a second to some web service, API endpoint, user journey, whatever. And these telemetry will occur even when users are not on your site. Telemetry being a cool way just to say collecting your monitoring data from remote locations. And then this type of monitoring will help you with use cases like validating successful releases at 3 a.m. And then the idea of passive monitoring, which is the telemetry you collect from already occurring interactions, right? So active synthetics, emulating those interactions, passive real user NPM tracing, telemetry from those already occurring interactions. And this visual here is meant to give some context as to why we need both active and passive. So if you take a peek at that dark blue, which is meant to convey the use of Catchpoint, proactive internet synthetics, by using this type of proactive monitoring, detecting an incident occurred in the first place is much faster. And saying it a different way, as we'll hear more about later when we get to some of our customer testimonials, we had a customer who used to use APM as their primary learning engine. Again, APM being a type of passive monitoring, but they were receiving upwards of 35,000 alerts a month because of the volume of data. And in their words, no human can react to 35,000 alerts per month. And so you might be saying, all right, I kind of get it, Leo. So why do we need APM, things like tracing at all? And the answer is, If the problem for disrupted user experience is not in the internet stack, then you need those traces, for example, to find problem in your app stack, when we'll show you what an example flow for that might might look like. And we don't do anything without purpose. So just to close out the active and passive talk track to understand how these capabilities work together, and since we want to lead to improvement in incident KPI, here's a stat that I thought was relevant from our annual SRE report, the 2024 version. So definitely use proactive synthetics and internet synthetics for detection, right? That top row there. And so if the problem, so the idea is if you monitor your customer experience and then work inward to calibrate your internal monitoring, so you're not collecting monitoring data for the sake of it, but for diagnosing the problem, right? If the problem is in the internet stack, use full IPM capabilities, but also if the problem is in the application stack, right? Use tracing, i.e. passive, excuse me, to find the root cause. So here at Catchpoint or the Catchpoint platform, we do offer multiple solutions, right? Solutions for your customers, your workforce, your network, your application, your website. But for this webinar, we want to focus on the customer experience solution for the sake of time. So that's the example we'll walk through. And so saying another way, we'd offer different methods and strategies like we're talking about for the different solutions, for the different use cases. But again, we'll just focus on customer experience for the sake of time. And so Brandon, maybe you could kind of start us off with how we want to talk about and convey these capabilities.
Yeah, definitely. The first method that is essential to cover all 4 pillars of internet resilience would be proactive internet synthetics. And the most important thing to ensure with that, and to ensure that you're getting what you require out of it, is to focus on monitoring from where it matters. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, what we mean by that is to monitor from as close to your users as possible. Everyone's users and where they may be and where they're coming from may be different. So, it's important to have a breadth of coverage to cover all those potential use cases. What you're looking at is an illustration to showcase the world's largest commercial active monitoring network. This gives you the ability to match that experience footprint of your customers. Their internet stack is unique to them, kind of like a fingerprint. And the ability for this level of visibility and resilience into their journeys wasn't possible before IPM. Now, here's a sample of some observations to make using proactive internet synthetics. Internet synthetics being a unique Catchpoint's IPM capability for deep visibility into your internet stack. That is, your services are way more than just a simple web page. It's essential to note that these frequencies and test types that you see on the screen here are tailored to typical use cases. So depending on the unique needs of a service, the frequency could be increased to sub-minute intervals, or maybe additional tests can be incorporated for a more granular view. By integrating such a suite into your own monitoring strategy, you can gain comprehensive visibility into your application's performance and availability, the DNS resolution, the TCP layer connectivity, the SSL certificate health, and the user transaction functionality. All of this to ensure a superior customer experience.
Brandon, I don't know if you touch on this specific point when we talk about the implementation, but one of our customers is a large platform provider, and so they provide a couple of layers of the stack for their customers to build upon which to build their apps. And in his words, he was like, "You would be surprised as to how many freaking SSL certificate expiries we have to deal with. So it's like the things that people don't don't think about, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So just to kind of go through, give some visuals to the pillars, right? So this is talking about the availability pillar, and one of the unique features that part of the secret sauce here is the flexibility and customization of how you can tailor your proactive monitoring strategy. So whether it's a protocol test type from the previous screen or any of the other array of protocol test types we have, right? You can tailor for even the most rigid of use cases. So on the left, you can see we have some data from the monitors firing at the same time, versus on the right, we have them spread out across an interval. Again, the customization here, right? So you don't have to wait 5, 10, 15 minutes for observability. You can troubleshoot in sub-second intervals to achieve quicker remediation. But again, it's the flexibility and the customization that's kind of the critical point here. Now, the other pillar that we talked about was performance, in how fast or how slow was it. But here's what one of the critical things I'd like for the team to think when we talk about performance is kind of the cardinality and the dimensions. So is it available, and is it fast, or is it slow? But is it fast or is it slow across different dimensions? And what level of cardinality do we need? So here we have a simple example of showing performance on a city by city basis, right? Cardinality in analytics. And remember from the previous slide that each of the dots on that world map is their own version of Enzo's restaurant. And you need the ability to know which markets, which cities, which regions, which et cetera are performing relative to how much revenue they're bringing in, just as an example. And then the last critical thing I'd like for the team to remember when we talk about performance is that performance data is a distribution, right? You can't just look at a single average or single median and be like, oh, our response time is X number of seconds. So here you can see that the vast majority of response times between 7 and 10 seconds, but also note the response times above and below that range. And as part of your resilience formula, IPM will give you the ability to transform mountains of data into molehills of information into precise actions. Now, this reachability pillar. So combine active and passive, right, across dimensions, cardinality, get that stereo vision, and make sure your passive real user contains reachability diagnostics. Another secret ingredient in our secret sauce recipe, what we've done here at Catchpoint is implemented network level error logging into our real user product. It's already built into our nodes, but it's also in our real user product. So if any of your customers cannot connect or reach your services, we'll log that from wherever they are, allowing you to diagnose. Let's say, for example, you see a sudden drop in conversions, maybe some weather event cut an underground fiber or something like that. We'll be able to give you that real-time diagnostics from wherever your users actually are. And then the last, monitor the canaries, aka reliability. So please forgive me, everyone. I just love this slide. I thought it was a beautiful slide, right? Monitor the canaries, talking about reliability, and canary deployment being your products and services are used by a gajillion folks. So you deploy to a small subset before deploying to everyone in case you discover an issue or something like that. So this is a prime use case for synthetics and internet synthetics, right? Monitor entire experiences or monitor the incremental releases, feature flags before they get deployed to the masses. And in this, again, in this example, when we talk about the canary releases, here we're showing how IPM can show you the performance on a release by release basis, but any dimension can be the canary, right? Any cardinal dimension can be the canary, like city, operating system version, browser version. Any dimension can be the canary. And if you see a problem, you can click right in as a little hover button there, right, directly into the record, click through to the tracing, look at the alerts. And so if the problem happens to be in your internet stack, what we happen to be looking at here is our stack map feature, which is tied to our internet sonar feature, right? Answering the question, is it me or something else? But then the other thing that the stack map does is, if you think about that, our products and services and the internet in general are dependencies on top of other dependencies. This maps those out in a stack-like view so you can drill down and see where the problem lies. And if the problem does wind up being in your application stack, then you can click directly through to the trace, right? Again, active and passive. So that was the example flow that I was mentioning earlier, how you've got some active and passive data coming in. And if you want to click through to IPM, to the backend, through your stack map, through your backend application trace map, right? That's what that example flow would look like. Alrighty, Brandon. So before we get to the good stuff, we'll thank everyone for their patience, and we'll go ahead and take a second to open up our second poll. So we, on the solution wheel slide, we talked about solutions for your customers, for your workforce, for your application, for your network, for your website. So this question, this piece of research is, do you believe your workforce requires the same resilient experience as your customers? If you could take a moment to navigate to the poll tab, team, please, and cast your vote. Do you believe your workforce requires the same resilient experience as your customers? And what's interesting here is I'm glad that everyone realized it was not a trick question. Oh, we've got one. Yeah. So, there are certain inflection points where along the way we decided to talk about this idea of the internet stack and the need for internet performance monitoring. One of those inflection points being that in this world of anytime, anywhere workforce, that they expect the same frictionless experiences as what you try to provide for your customers. And you don't want that gap between what your workforce experiences and your customers' experience to get too wide, right? In bringing them together is this concept of total experience. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing these results. And finally, let's get to the good stuff. So Brandon, if you could kind of talk to us about some real world examples, what some of our customers are telling us, and I'll let you take it from here.
Definitely. Thank you, Leo. As he mentioned, let's get into the implementation and how to reduce mean time to detect and mean time to repair with some real world examples. So let me go ahead on to the next slide here. Now, if there was ever a time to open up your nearest notepad or favorite text editor, this would be it. We will now be walking through the end user experience maturity model, which is essentially a checklist on how to implement a strategy that ensures internet resilience and keeps the good times rolling for your customers, yourself, and your internal employees. Now, before we get into how to implement an IPM strategy in those real world examples, let's walk through some requirements of an IPM platform. Each of these components that you see on the screen now are critical to get to the end goal of internet resilience. Whether it's smart boards that allow you to cut through the data with ease and get to the root cause quicker, internet synthetics combined side by side with real user and working in tandem, and Analytics Explorer that gives you the flexibility and customization to drill through the data how you want. You know, maybe APIs and integrations allowing you to feed or pull the data into any other observability solution, getting everyone on a single pane of glass potentially. Or Internet Sonar and StackMap, which utilize our AI engine to answer the question, as Leo mentioned before, is it just me, or is everyone else in the world or in a region experiencing the issues that we are? As well as giving you an at-a-glance view into your entire internet stack and which layer or service may be impacted by that potential outage or event. Now, if you don't have any of these requirements in your observability strategy, then stay tuned because we can help implement it for you, centered around those 4 pillars that we mentioned at the beginning. So how does one implement an IPM strategy? Well, if we start with reachability, this is, of course, the starting point of any digital interaction, and you must ensure that users' requests make it to your server without a hitch, which sets the initial tone for that user experience. Well, what does this require? Well, this requires, from a test perspective, lightweight synthetic monitors at the HTTP, DNS, and network layers. Alerts configured to notify you of availability issues, changes in the network path, or any degradation in round trip time or packet loss along the path. These monitors must be ran from backbone locations for external customer use cases and enterprise nodes for on-premise or workforce use cases. And don't forget RUM network error logging. I know that's a mouthful, but this is critical to fill the gaps in that real user data set where your users may be experiencing reachability issues like unavailable DNS or poor network connections. Moving over to the next pillar, which is, of course, availability. Well, what does it take here? Well, true availability extends beyond a simple HTTP 200 OK, right? It involves ensuring all functionalities of an application are working as expected and intended. Users, you know, if it's an e-commerce site, for example, if your site images or descriptions fail to load, it's not fully available to the user. They can't check out, and at the end of the day, you can't generate revenue from that particular user. So this pillar requires some additional monitors, as you can see on the screen here. This is where you can get into API and web transactions. So actually executing multi-step API or web service calls, or going through a Selenium, Playwright, or Puppeteer user journey via a web transaction. Now, these are to ensure that your app or service are fully functionable on an ongoing basis, as well as SSL, right? Because if your service is expired, can your users actually trust your site? Will they check out? Will they continue on that user journey? Some additional features are required at this point, like screenshots to see if the page fully loaded as you expected, and response and data capture, which allows you to see exactly what the user, you know, is seeing and confirm that your app is loading as expected. Now, for real user, this introduces our outage analyzer. Now, this allows you to catch potential outages of a large group of users, whether it's per continent, per country, per region, by comparing your current visitors at this point in time, or the last 24 hours per se, versus the past 7 days average during the same time frame. Huge drop in visitors, you may be experiencing a current availability event. Moving over now to performance. This pillar focuses on the speed and responsiveness of your application. It's about benchmarking your performance against your own thresholds and industry leaders to provide a competitive user experience. Additional network types need to be considered and leveraged here to measure your true performance, because your users aren't just coming from one type of network. This means running tests from last mile and wireless providers within those regions that your users are coming from, as well as, again, those backbone and enterprise nodes if it is an on-premise use case. Film strips are critical to understanding key performance indicators. Now, when I mention key performance indicators, this may vary from industry to industry and company to company, but some of these may be things like first contentful paints, cumulative layout shifts. Now, you want to see how these play a major part in whether or not your users are satisfied with their experience. Now, if you're leveraging a CDN provider, a CDN mapping dashboard gives you an at-a-glance view into how the routing and performance of their edge servers are impacting your user experience from a performance perspective. Also, how often is it just your initial HTML or first-party objects that cause the issue? Hosts, zones, and request charting allows you to analyze each provider down to the individual tracking pixel to detect and optimize when needed. Now, last but not least, most would actually consider this the most important pillar of resilience, and that's reliability. The hallmark of reliability is the application's ability to consistently deliver on all four pillars, or all three pillars prior to this one, and that's reachability, availability, and performance, ensuring all users receive a uniform experience, no matter the circumstances. This could be where they're coming from, what page that they're on. All of that is extremely important. Now, this is where Internet Sonar and StackMap can come into play for you. Internet Sonar excels at giving you quick insights into any of your third-party service providers. And what I mean by that, DNS, CDN, cloud infrastructure, software as a service, marketing tech, anything that is outside of your immediate control. Whereas StackMap provides you a detailed GPS of which layer, service, or synthetic test may be experiencing an issue and how customer impacting the issue actually is. Another one to drill into would be Real User Engagement Estimator. Prepare or optimize for the future by leveraging your own data to create what-if scenarios on the fly. For example, if we were to improve our time to interactive by 1 second, how much additional revenue would that generate? I like this slide here. So now let's look at a few real world examples where companies were able to achieve IPM bliss. Now just imagine picturing your IPM bliss here. Pretty colors, beautiful trees, big mountains. I mean, who doesn't want to see their users happy? This guy looks really happy. Sitting on a beach somewhere, being able to reach your application or service, as well as being able to complete a checkout within the time that they expect, and the next day, and the next day, during their entire vacation. I'm sure that's what everyone's striving for. So let's look at a couple of those real world examples. Where I'm going to start here is with Company A large software company leveraging end-to-end internet performance monitoring to ensure exceptional customer experience for over 3,500 retailers. Well, they started their journey in 2021, and since then, they've transformed from reactive to proactive. In 2021, when they were coming from a reactive state, they were relying on traditional APM only. Then enters IPM, and over the last 3 years, they've reduced their time to identification from 180 minutes to 3 minutes. They've reduced their yearly incidents by 20,000, and they have only violated 0.1% of their service level agreements compared to 16% in 2021. Let's look at the next company here, Company B, a global retailer with big warehouse stores. For them, internet performance monitoring provides operational intelligence to drive customer excellence in every aspect of the business. Whether it's their customers, their own employees, they really care about it all. Now, the outcome of introducing IPM to their portfolio was to ensure productivity of 180,000 employees across 392 stores in 32 countries, and making sure that they can use the apps they need every day. By monitoring the APIs for all internal applications and reducing the end user impact from design studios to even warehouse applications. They were able to optimize the uptime and performance of their website to protect their e-commerce revenue, which keeps them competitive as a top brand in their industry, regardless of what may come next in today's world. They're able to utilize actionable data to improve on their SLOs and SLIs, focusing on all 4 pillars of internet resilience. And again, those are reachability, availability, performance, and reliability. Now, the last company here that I want to talk about would be Company C, a top provider in the cloud infrastructure industry. They had way too many tools that only provided limited visibility into how their platform was performing for their end users globally. Now, the outcome of introducing IPM, well, the year prior, they actually experienced about 52 global SEV1 or Severity 1, top severity incidents. Introducing IPM, Internet Performance Monitoring, that was lowered down to only 2 SEV1 customer impacting incidents. Now, along this journey, they also approximately saved about $4 million in service level agreement penalties compared to the year prior, and that is prior to introducing Internet Performance Monitor. Now, last but not least, I think this one's a pretty big one here. They reduced their time to find a root cause of an issue to 5 minutes. Now, before that, they weren't even able to determine what that time to root cause was. Really what they were sticking to was, well, how long did it take for us to actually triage an incident? And in this case, it was taking 35 minutes just to triage, compared to now finding the root cause of an issue within 5 minutes. We promised a takeaway, so here's one of those. You can get a copy of this after the session, so don't worry about zooming in or putting on your readers. This is the IPM checklist, and this is built to help you along your journey to internet resilience. It lists the tests, the types of alerts, the nodes and the network types you should be running from, the additional features, and the analysis tools needed to get you there. Now, keep in mind, this list is forever growing. It's a living, breathing thing as new things get introduced to the Catchpoint's IPM portfolio. And here's another takeaway. In this one, we drew a little deeper, and this is a sample strategy for an external customer use case that you can leverage with your proactive internet synthetics. It provides some additional details so you can have faith in your implementation and lower your key business metrics, like the few examples I walked through. Excellent. Before we wrap it up here and answer some of your questions, let's go ahead and launch the next poll.
Yep.
Thank you, Leo. You did that already.
So, because we've got this poll and then we've got kind of the survey closed, so I opened it a few moments ago. Perfect. But so think about your customers, your workforce, your network, your application, your website. And then think about the various products that we kind of touched upon, right? Synthetics, internet synthetics, real user, tracing, BGP, sonar. And so we just want to get an idea of how resilient people feel or how people feel the level of resilience is for their internet performance monitoring strategy. So this, since this poll has been open for a couple of minutes already, what I'd like to do is close the poll here in a few seconds, and then just open up the survey close poll, which is what additional information could we provide? And while you're thinking about your answer to that question, if you could navigate to the polls tab, I'll just offer a gentle reminder to navigate to the documents tab and be sure to take a peek at the additional resources there. So it's one thing when people of Catchpoint get on to talk about our products and solutions, but as Brandon talked us through in the end, it's another thing, one, when our customers provide testament, and two, when you have a prominent analyst like EMA do a white paper on this very topic as well. Again, the SRE report, right? The primary author on that asset, or 2024 being our latest version. So that's also a very good read, but I might be biased there. And I think I got the handful of questions that came in. Excuse me, that came in while you were talking, Brandon. There were a couple of points that I had wanted to interject, but you had already moved on by the time I was finished typing. So while we work to go ahead and wrap this up, we have 2 more classes in this masterclass series. So August 21st, all about SLIs, SLOs, SLAs, and then inherent error budgets, right? Well, what the heck's an error budget? Well, tune in to find out. And then the last one, API monitoring, testing, everything in between. So that's monitoring, that's testing, verifying functionality, right? Regression, right? We're going to have a lot of fun with that one. So on that note, we'll take a moment to say again, thank you so much for your time. We'll go ahead and work to wrap this up. Brandon, you want to sign us off, say hello, goodbye, and thank you to everyone. Otherwise, thanks again for your time, team.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Definitely looking forward to the next masterclass with you, Leo.
All right. Cheers, everyone.
Bye, everyone.